Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So I know that this channel is mostly for pre-PA advice and whatnot, but I thought I would do something a little bit different and talk about my semester abroad. So before we get started with all of this overload of information, I took a lot of videos and pictures while I was abroad. It's way too much to include in this video, but I will include like little snippets of each place I went now. So I went to San Diego State University, and actually my major and my minor both required me to study abroad. It would have been something I would have done anyways, but it just it was nice since it was required. They had some classes like set aside that they've already approved that you can take at certain universities, in different countries. So it just made it a little bit easier to study abroad. So I actually decided that I was going to do a full semester like pretty late. Usually you plan that in like your sophomore year. I didn't decide I wanted to go for a full semester until my junior year. I realized like honestly it was cheaper to go for a full semester versus like a 2-week program. The finances kind of worked out better. So since I was pre-health, I had never really heard of any pre-health people going abroad, because obviously you have so many prerequisites to do, you have so many hours to get, you have all this like pressure to, get ready to apply, and I was thinking a full semester would take me away from that. And that's a full 6 months of me not really doing anything pre-PA, and I wanted to apply right after I graduated. So at first I thought that would hinder me. But then I realized that I also I have the time to travel the world and have like minimal classes and be this age, and the cost really wasn't that bad. Like, when will I get those experiences ever? And to me that was worth potentially not getting in this cycle for PA school and having to apply another cycle. Like, that was just so worth it for me. And even now, I did get accepted the cycle, but if I didn't, I would still not have blamed that on my study abroad. Like, that was the best experience I did in undergrad, and I would never take that away. So I went to Leeds Beckett University, so it was in Leeds, which is about like a 3-hour train ride north of London. It was like a smaller town, but it was still a pretty big city. They had, airports that were close by and like train stations and everything, so travel was easy. So I actually took 3 courses while I was there. They were pass, fail. I took a general ed, so music course. I took a biomechanics course, and then I took like anatomy for like exercise, specialized kinesiology. So none of them counted for any of my prereqs for PA school, and they didn't count as a grade. It was just a pass-fail, so technically you can get like a C in them and still pass. Another thing to keep in mind when you're studying abroad, I know like in America we have general ed classes, and like they're usually like easy because they're intro classes, but if you go abroad they don't really have gen ed classes, so you're taking classes that are in their major. So these people have already had background knowledge, they already have experience in this and like know what they're talking about. So like I took a music class, and it was like I think it was like a 2nd year class, and so their full first year was all about music and like related stuff, media and all of that, and I've never had any classes in that, so they were already like way above me. So it wasn't like an easy like fun class. It wasn't terrible, but I wasn't at their level. Like, they already had a lot of background knowledge that I just didn't have. So I just keep that in mind if you plan to save like your general ed units for your abroad. So I know a lot of questions people had for me when I was studying abroad was like, did you have time to travel? Like, were you just stuck studying? And I got lucky. I chose classes that didn't have too many requirements. I kind of got lucky because I knew a lot of the knowledge from before, like anatomy and stuff like that. I didn't really have to study much. So I actually traveled to I think about like 15 countries. I went a month early actually with my parents, and we did a road trip. So we started in England, went to Wales, took a ferry over to Ireland, went to Northern Ireland, and then to Scotland, and then back into England. So we just rented a car and just did that whole trip. And that was so much fun. I got to see so much of, the countryside of England, or, areas that you don't really get to see when you're just taking planes. So I got to see, the whole UK from a different perspective. But to answer your question, yes, there is so much time to travel when you're studying abroad if you plan it out. So I just, if I had assignments, I knew to get them done early. I know some of my friends were studying hardcore and had all these papers to write and everything. I had assignments too, but I was good at, scheduling them early because I wanted to take that weekend trip to Iceland, so I did. And I just did my essay a week beforehand, and it works out. So for the countries I traveled to, I'm going to list them out, and I don't want it to sound like, oh, I went to all these places, because I'm going to explain like later how I was able to travel for pretty cheap and some tips on that. But these are the countries I went to, or places I went to. So England, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Germany, France, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, the Vatican, Netherlands, Belgium, Liechtenstein, which is that little tiny province, and then Iceland. So I know that sounds like a lot, and I know when you think of plane tickets from the US that you're thinking like, okay, each plane ticket was like at least $200, but that's not true. I think the most expensive flight I paid for while I was over there was to Iceland, and that was like $120 round trip from England, so that wasn't bad at all. Everything else was done through Hopper Air, or it's just Hopper. I think the app is called Hopper. I have it all written down here. And you basically, it's an app where it's the same with like Google Flights. I've never really used Google Flights, but Hopper worked really well. You put in your locations, and it's like a whole calendar year, and they tell you like when it's cheapest to go. So my friend and I had a few weekends, and we were just kind of, you know, looking at places, and I saw Iceland, and it was super cheap like the first week of November. So I was like, that's been my dream since I like forever, to go see the Northern Lights and just to see Iceland in general. So I booked our tickets, and then a couple weeks later we were on our flight to Iceland. I think in abroad you have to kind of keep your mind open to where you want to travel to. You know, there are some places I didn't get to, and then some places I never thought I would see, and they were just amazing. Other websites to use, or other things to use, is Ryanair, Expedia, and then obviously Airbnb. And I know those aren't like new things, and I'm not like, this isn't some like groundbreaking, you know, advice, but honestly sometimes Expedia was cheaper than Airbnb, and sometimes Airbnb was cheaper. You know, it just, you really have to like shop around before you go. So when we went to Iceland, we found our hostel was $15 a night. And it was like right in the heart of Reykjavik, and it was perfect for everything. They had a bus stop right there, so all the tours like went literally from right outside our hotel, and that was just happened to be on Expedia as a hostel, but it was a really nice hostel. And then in Italy we actually got, it was the most beautiful Airbnb, but it was actually a hotel that was on Airbnb for $20 a night on the Amalfi Coast, and we would you know, wake up, open our door, and there's these just windows just on the coast, on the cliffs of Amalfi, and then they had like a breakfast like lined up for us with all like traditional like Italian type, you know, meats and stuff like that, an espresso machine and freshly squeezed orange juice. Like it was the whole, for 20 something dollars per night. You know, we found that on Airbnb. So you really just have to shop around, and there are really good deals if you look ahead of time, or if you're patient, or if you look, you know, a few times instead of just like going, looking, and booking instantly. Sometimes it takes a little bit, and you have to like stalk the prices. So like I said, for my school, in terms of affording all of this, my school actually has like plans with certain schools where we just pay the same tuition. So tuition at San Diego State, it's like almost about $8,000, and so my tuition for that semester was $8,000. So I paid nothing more. So that really helped, you know, the money that I had saved up for traveling didn't have to go towards my tuition, because we had already had that figured out, you know, already budgeted into my whole 4 years of college. So the only money that I like saved up and spent was all for traveling, for my plane tickets and for all of that. There are also scholarships out there. So like I said, my school required us to study abroad. So if your school requires you to study abroad, they have scholarships most often. So I actually got one from our like leadership associated students. So I applied for that, and then I got an honors, so I'm in the honors college. Since they require us, you can apply for a scholarship. So between them, I got a couple grand. And I know it's not like, doesn't pay for everything, but that definitely paid for like, you know, part of my tuition. So apply for them. I know a lot of people apply for scholarships, and sometimes it's tedious. You have to write essays and you have to do all these things, but it's worth it, even if it's just a couple $100, because that's an extra plane ticket, you know, that you won't have to buy later on, or another adventure that you'll get to do that you might not have been able to do before. I also did get really lucky because my cousin actually was living in Germany at the time that I was abroad, so I would just take round trip flights from Manchester to Germany for like $35 and just go spend the weekend with him. So I got lucky in that sense, but if you don't have someone living there, that's fine. Like I said, there's so many options of places to stay, and also you'll meet friends that you're like abroad. There's just opportunities just pop up all the time. So I was stressed out that I wouldn't find somebody to travel with, that I wouldn't, you know, have all these trips, because like I didn't want to go by myself, and I had all these worries, but everything really just falls into place. You find people there that also want to travel. You find, you know, good deals that you just all kind of go on, and oftentimes the schools like actually have like tours set up for you. So we had ones that went all over England. So we went, literally just took like weekend trips. We took a full weekend trip up to Edinburgh in Scotland, and we did like a whole like haggis, you know, whiskey, like all these really fun things, and that was actually offered through my school. I also recommend going to places off season, and obviously it might not be like what you pictured it to be, but it was so fun. So for example, we went to Italy during Christmas time, so I actually got to see the Pope speak on Christmas, and you know, the Vatican and all of that, and that was absolutely amazing. But we also went to the Amalfi Coast during the winter, and there was nobody there. We went to Positano, which is like, you know, the beautiful place on Instagram that you see with all these models and the boats and the bikinis and the, you know, the houses all up and there was no one there at all. That we went down to the beach where all the chairs are usually laid out. They were all gone. There's like a stray cat, and like their boats, they had all bought them out of the sea and like put them up on the walkways. Like we were actually the only people there. And although like that sounds terrible and that doesn't sound fun, it was absolutely incredible because all of those streets, you know, the beautiful, you know, houses and everything that you see, that everybody's like, there's 1,000 people there, 1,000 tourists. We were the only ones there, and that's incredible. Also, I thought I would include some of my recommendations. Obviously anywhere you go is really pretty and unique and different, but these are some of the places that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to butcher some of their names, but here we go. So Bath in England was absolutely beautiful. It's very like Roman culture, because that's where there's a lot of Romans in England. And there's a lot of history to it that I honestly don't know a lot of it, but it's beautiful. They have a Roman bath there and a beautiful church and everything, so highly recommend that. France, really pretty. It's right by Germany. It's just a cute little quaint town, but it definitely feels very France. I don't know, I guess you feel like you're in Europe there, because some cities have been like not Americanized, because that's not obviously, but they're just very similar to America. You know, they have the same stores, same layouts, kind of like strip mall type look, but there's certain cities like Colmar that just don't look like America at all. Like you definitely feel like, okay, I'm in France. So it's pretty neat. Now I can't say this one, Garmisch-Partenkirchen, that's terrible, I can't pronounce that, but anyways, it's in the Bavarian Alps. It's kind of close to Munich in Germany, and it is gorgeous. I went there in the winter, in January, so it was like the peak of winter, beautiful snow, and just I had the most beautiful morning of my life there, walking around in the snow by myself. Weymouth, England, which is on the coast of England, and they have really beautiful like rocky places, and that water is gorgeous. Like when you think of England, I guess you don't think of beautiful crystal blue water, but England definitely has a lot of really great places like that, and Weymouth is one of them. Snowdonia National Park. Funny enough, this is in Wales. We actually accidentally ended up there. We were trying to get to where our Airbnb was to take the ferry over to Ireland, and we got lost and we got stuck up in the mountains, and it turned out to be Snowdonia. And then I actually went on a class trip there a few months later, and we hiked it, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It's just so pretty. The hills are just beautiful, like bright orange, and there's waterfalls and just like animals all over. Highly, highly recommend that, especially if you like hikes. Another really pretty place was Bruges, Belgium. We stopped in Bruges and we had an Airbnb, and it was on a farm, and it was beautiful. The guy asked us what time we wanted to like wake up, and we were like, oh, 9 sounds good. And when we woke up at 9, he had fresh breakfast all made for us, apple juice from his own apple orchard. He had his like sheep out there grazing. It was just beautiful, and the countryside, it was just absolutely gorgeous. But alright, I have said way too much. I've talked way too much, but I really enjoyed my study abroad trip. If you can't tell that I can't stop talking about it, I still miss it all the time. It was like the best 6 months ever, and it was so amazing that my family got to come and experience it with me for a bit, and I've met so many people, and I have actually people who I met there are going to come see me this summer. So it just has created such unique opportunities in my life that I never thought I would have before. But if you have any questions, or you're thinking about going abroad and like wondering what classes you should take, or I mean, obviously I'm not an advisor, but I can kind of help with that because I've been through that process, and sometimes choosing classes is a little bit difficult. If you have any questions about the locations I went, or you're traveling there soon, not even studying abroad, I'd love to offer you some tips and some like restaurants I went to, and maybe some things to avoid. But yeah, that was my study abroad experience, and I'll probably include a little bit more, make some more videos about specific locations, such as like Italy and stuff. I've learned some tips, you know, while I was there. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.